Do you need encouragement to turn tragedies into your own triumphant life story? If so, this podcast is for you. Listen to powerful guests who have persevered through challenges so you can gain strength to build your championship life. The host of Professor of Perseverance podcast, Dr. James Purdue.
Hey, come on in again today. It's time for the Professor of Perseverance podcast. Thank you for coming in. I am the Professor of Perseverance himself, Dr. James Purdue, here to give you another guest that's going to share their powerful, inspirational story, their journey, how they overcame adversity, persevered, kicked triumphs in the butt, and moved on, letting us know that life is worth living no matter what we go through. All right. I know some people struggle more than others, and I'm sorry for that. I know some people get bigger struggles than others. Sorry for that. But again, the message is still the same. We're going to provide hope, encouragement, motivation, inspiration to let you know, hey, move on, do the best you can, and let's go. All right. Now, her journey, man, she would share her journey, how she overcome family, childhood sexual abuse, domestic violence, mental health struggles, and how she went from 2 days away from ending her life. She attended a woman's workshop where she finally understood self love is the true key to happiness. And now she has created her own women's empowerment workshop as a way to help other people. Welcome to the show, Charlene Madden.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good
No,
morning,
no.
everybody.
Oh, thank you for coming on again, sharing your valuable time because we know the time is valuable, and for you to get out there, help other people. You know that I
Mhm.
think that's not the only reason we're on this big ball of dirt, but one reason I think we ought to be able to help people as much as possible.
Makes it much worth being here. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
We can provide some blessings, and blessings can come back to us. So.
Absolutely.
All right, Charlene, again, thank you for being here. And I'm giving you the platform to take over, and you just start where you need to go, and we'll interject every now and again.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for having me. My story begins at a very young age. I was born into a family. I was the youngest of four siblings. The family I was born into was extremely dysfunctional. My father was a very violent alcoholic. And at the age of 3, my parents separated. My mom took my older brothers. My sister and I stayed with my dad. Unfortunately, being such a severe alcoholic, he was in no position to care for 2 young girls. So he contacted my maternal grandparents, my mother's parents, and asked if they would take us in. And my grandmother, without skipping a beat, said, "Absolutely, I will take the girls." Went to live with my grandparents. My grandmother was an absolutely awe-inspiring woman in my life. She, I think, was far ahead of her time, very much into women's empowerment herself, wanted to see women get educated because she had a very limited education, I think grade 4, grade 5. So education was extremely important to her. And she always instilled to be independent, to look after yourself, because that was the only person you had to depend on. And I think I learned that lesson well, maybe too well in my life. My grandfather, on the other hand, was a pedophile. And both my sister and I experienced over 9 years of sexual abuse at his hands. When I was 12, my sister was older. She was 16. Her being older, she experienced a lot more of the abuse than I did as being the younger one. But at the age of 12, it all came out and everything changed in my life. My grandparents divorced. My grandmother, my sister, and I went to live in kind of low income housing. And that was the life that I was brought into or came into. And I remember one of the important memories, anchor memories that I have of that time is sitting in the social services office after it came out and having the social worker kind of pat me on the back saying, "You're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay." And that was basically it. There was no real follow-up. There was no intensive counseling or therapy. That just we're talking the 80s, so it wasn't a thing that happened. It was more of a, we lived in a small town, so it was more of a kind of just swept under the carpet. Let's just move on and forget that this ever happened.
Wow,
And
it's amazing. Even in the 80s, that they've had to have statistics, that show the mental abuse, emotional
mm,
abuse, concepts of, that they needed to get that they know that children needed counseling to let them
mhm,
open up and experience. So that's amazing.
mhm,
It's still in the 80s that they were hiding it that bad.
mhm,
So let me ask
mhm.
you one question. Here is
Yeah.
you said up till 12 is when everything finally blew up. Did your sister not say something to grandmother? Did grandmother not believe you? Did grandmother try to say something to him? And I mean, or just finally at 12, like you said, it finally just blew up.
I believe my sister had said something to my grandmother, and I don't know whether it was not believed or whether it was she confronted my grandfather and he denied it. I know personally I did not say anything. And when I reflect back on it, having come from my family where, my parents, I felt both gave us or gave me away. I didn't want to be given away. I didn't want to be sent away. And
Hmm.
I think it was in the back of my mind that if I said anything, that I might be sent away. And at that point, my grandmother was the only anchor that I had.
Yes.
She was the only person I felt I could that loved me and I could depend on. So
And
I
it's understandable, yes. At a child at
mhm,
that age, you don't want to break the family up. Want to be
mhm,
with mom and dad, still grandparent,
mhm,
and wouldn't want to. Yeah, that's very understandable. Yes.
mhm. Yeah, so it didn't, and I mean, even when it came out, you live in a small town, my aunts and uncles lived in the town, all my cousins lived in the town. And I remember it being, I remember hearing stories of them even at that point thinking that it was us just trying, we were troubled kids. We had come from a broken home. We were just trying to cause trouble. We were just trying to get attention. And really, that was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want attention. I didn't want my
Oh yeah,
family to
no,
break up.
nobody, no child wants the
No,
attention,
yeah, so I mean,
especially of this caliber.
yeah, because I mean everybody knew, so now I came now I'm now the child that came from the broken home to the
Hmm.
child who's been sexually abused for almost a decade. Um,
Yes.
and so going on, into life, and I mean at 12, I'm going into high school, the next year. So I'm already struggling with the transitions of that coming into being a teenager and the emotions. And I go into high school, and one of my outlets was always writing. I always said that I spilled ink onto paper rather than blood because it was at that point it was one of those two options because I was struggling so bad with the emotions. And of course my writing was a lot of dark and depressing topics, of course, because I was trying to release all these emotions.
Hmm.
And of course it caught the attention of my teacher, who sent me to the school counselor, who brought in a school psychologist, and I get an assessment done. And I think I was 15 at this time, where I get a diagnosis of being manic depressive bipolar. I have no idea at that age what that means at all. But again, another anchoring memory is just, the school psychologist basically giving me a pat on the back saying, everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. No follow up. Again, didn't receive
Wow.
any counseling. So to me, it was this pattern that was beginning in my life where everybody was telling me that everything was going to be okay, but it didn't feel okay.
Yeah.
And I just, didn't feel like I could depend on anybody. So it just kind of sunk me deeper into the spot that I was in. I was suffering from suicidal ideologies. I was cutting myself, and and all this while I'm trying to maintain this persona of being okay, keeping this mask on that I'm okay, and trying to work so hard to make my grandma proud because that was the only person I had left that I felt, was stable in my life. So I did extremely well in school, um, because school was so important to her. I worked so hard to get good grades, straight A's, honor roll, all these things just to ensure I was, getting the validation that I needed from her because that's what I was seeking was the external validation.
Hmm.
So,
It had to been an out for you. Um, the more I concentrate on this, the less I have to think about the other.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, get through high school, decide that I'm going to move. I wanted to get away from the small area I grew up in, of course, because that was where all the memories are. That's where everybody knew. And I just wanted to go somewhere where no one knew me. I didn't want to be looked at as anything other than just a normal person, even though I really wasn't feeling normal at the time. So moved away with my high school sweetheart. Had 3 amazing children, and this is over a 13-year period, got married, but all the while still struggling, trying to keep
Oh
this
yeah.
mask on that I'm okay because I'd never learned any healthy coping skills.
That's right.
And, didn't wanna talk about it because I just wanted to forget that it was even happening or it had happened. And of course, that's not a good, coping mechanism because no matter where you go, there you are. I was still didn't matter where I went, I was gonna, still have to deal with my issues.
Well, if you
Um,
don't know how to release to get this stress and stuff out, the boiling point, pressure point is finally going to exceed, and you're going to explode.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean, at that point, I was drinking heavily. Um, slipped in. I kind of, slipped into the alcoholic patterns that my father had. I don't know much about my father's childhood or upbringing, but
Hmm.
for me, it was just if I could just numb it and
Uh huh.
forget about it for a while, everything would be okay. But of
Yeah.
course, you sober up and the issues are still there. So at the age of I think I was 28, I started to slip into a really severe depression where I knew that the suicidal ideologies were going to be acted on if I didn't make a change. And I was absolutely terrified that my children were going to come home and find me dead at my house.
Hmm.
So I made a decision to leave my household. I left my husband, I left my children because at that point I was not fit to be a mother to them. And
Okay.
this
Now
kind of,
this is another issue here that for the better family life, you've got to get out of here so your daughters or children don't see how you are and how you acting, and again the possibility of suicide coming in. They're tired of probably seeing you drinking, and so you're thinking of them to get out.
mhm.
How are they taking this? That you're abandoning them? They don't
That,
quite understand. I mean, I know
yeah, that
this
was
is a
my
different.
biggest.
This would be a different topic in otherwise, but I'm trying to
Yeah. Well,
jump
and
in
that
here.
that was a fear that I had because to me it was like just repeating that generational cycle, where here I am now I'm leaving my kids just like my parents left me, right?
Hmm.
Which just added to the chaos that was already in my mind. Now I was
Yeah.
dealing with this overwhelming, you know, disappointment in myself that I had
Hmm.
not broken the cycle that I wanted to so desperately break.
Yes.
My kids were still, I'm trying to think when it was 1998. So my son was just a year and a half. My other
Okay.
daughter was like 4 and my other daughter was like 7 or 8. So they were still extremely young when I left.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was close by and stayed. I was at the house every day, so I wasn't void from their life, but I wasn't at the home. Um, and I thought again, once again, leaving was gonna be the secret to everything, but again, all I did was I left, and because of all those emotions that got up brought up, I sunk deeper into depression, I drank more, and I ended up getting out of my marriage and jumping in within a month to another relationship that was extremely dysfunctional, um, and it went on. This was a relationship that went on for 13 years, but it was marked with um, domestic violence. He suffered from mental illness as well. And I always said that thank God we were never in the same place at the same time. When I was down, he was up. When
Hmm.
he was down, I was up, because if we had both been down at the same time, it would have probably been a really scary situation.
Yeah.
I again kept just spiraling down until I was sitting. We had had a violent encounter and he'd left the house. And I was sitting there on the couch and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I went into the bathroom, opened the cabinet, and took every pill that was in there. There was quite a few painkillers because he had injured his back, so he was on pain medication. So I just popped all the pills that I could find, went and sat on the couch, and started writing goodbye letters to my children, so at least they knew I was thinking of them. Um, and of course, when you're sitting there and you're in that moment, all I could think of was, I don't want to leave my kids in the final way. I'd already left them one way. I didn't want to leave them in the most final way.
Yes.
Um, so I called a cab. I went to the hospital, and I remember sitting in the admissions seat and saying, I'm here because I overdosed on pills, and that was it. That's the last thing I remember, until I woke up with tubes down my throat. And it was at that moment that my mom came and stepped back. She had been in and out of my life, and she had stepped in and said, because of course she had been notified of what had happened, and she said, "Okay, you need to come out here." I was living in Ontario at the time, Ontario, Canada. She was in British Columbia, West Coast. She said, "It's time to move out here. You need a change." So I packed everything and moved out west because, again, mindset is that location changes everything. But of course, all I did was just relocate my problems.
Yeah.
And my partner, I had had this dysfunctional relationship with me 6 months after I moved, decided that he wanted to move out west, be with me. Of course, said everything was going to change. But of course, nothing changes because neither of us had uh, done any of the work that we needed to do to improve our lives. So the uh, the relationship just continued to deteriorate. It was July of 2014, 2015. He left, and 2 months later, I had the police show up at my place of business and told me that he had committed suicide. He had taken his own life,
Okay.
and I was devastated. I mean, it was such an raw emotion. I mean, he had been in my children's lives for 13 and a half years, so he was like a father to my kids. And even as dysfunctional as the relationship was, there was still that codependent
Uh huh.
thing there. And I got really angry about it. And of course, all my friends were like, it's okay. Anger is one of the stages of grief. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not angry that he took his own life. I'm angry that he did it first.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, okay, that's
Yeah.
a hard concept for people to understand. And I
Oh,
was
yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
because here I am, I'm left to pick up the pieces of everything that had happened. And I see now I get to see the hurt and the pain and the heartache that's caused by it. I mean, that people are going to be hurt, but to actually have to go through it, I was so, so angry at that time. And so once again, I just try to put on this happy, I'm fine face. And it worked okay for, about a year. But it just, I got to the point where I wasn't going to be able to keep that darkness at bay that I've been struggling with. And I had purchased a house. And at this time, I had been seeing a psychologist. And I was in the process of purchasing a house, and I remember her being so excited for me because she thought that this was me making plans for the future. I was, this is the first step. Now you're making plans, and I'm sitting there in the seat, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm making plans. I'm making plans to kill myself next month, and the house is what I'm going to leave to my children because that's all I have of value to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And so my plan had been made. I was actually going to the same location that my ex partner had gone to. Um, I was going to shoot myself the same way he had done it. And I had the date and time set. I was going to go on a Monday morning because I always say, who likes Mondays, right? No one does. So um, all I had to do, and I got to the point where it was the weekend prior. All I had to do was get through this weekend, and I had bought tickets because a coworker of mine was going to this women's workshop, and she said, "Come with me. I don't want to go by myself." And I was like, "Okay." Didn't really want to go because I got nothing. I'm not working on myself. I'm like making
Yeah.
plans to end it. And but I went because again, it was so important to me to keep up this mask that I was okay. And went in on the Saturday morning into this room full of women that are all so excited about their lives and the future that's laying ahead of. And I'm like feeling nauseous because I'm like, geez, all I'm looking forward to is Monday where I can just end it all. And I'm sitting there and I heard a woman get on stage and she has alopecia, which means she's lost all of her hair. And
Mm-hmm.
she was talking about self love and how she had worked so hard on becoming, loving herself. And I kind of heard this voice in the back of my head that said, "Well, what about you?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, whatever. I've never loved myself. I never can. No one ever loved me. So why would I start loving myself?" And the
Yeah. If
next
no one
speaker,
else loved me, why should I take? I mean, if no one else thinks I'm worth loving, why should I think I'm worth loving? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And so then the next speaker gets up on stage and she's talking about living with mental health and depression and how she had learned to live with it and had gone out and was now living a fantastic life. And I'm sitting here going, "Oh my gosh," I can hear that little voice in the back of my head again going, "Well, what about you?" And I'm like, "I don't think I could ever live with this. Like
Mm-hmm.
how do you just live with this? How do you just accept it as being part of your life?" And then the last speaker got on stage and his name was Jared Morrison and he talked about living with mental health issues, addiction, and how he had spent, a year working on finding the perfect combination of pain medication and alcohol that he could take so that he could die and make it look like it was an accident because he worked in life insurance and he knew if he committed
That's right.
suicide, his kids wouldn't get his life insurance money.
Uh-huh.
And one evening, he found that perfect mix. And it just happened to be on an evening when his children were visiting. So here he is, he's slowly passing away with his children there, and he hears this voice going, "No, not like this. You've got more to do."
Mm-hmm.
And he got on the phone, he called for help, it changed his life, and now his purpose was going out, sharing his stories, sharing his struggles in order to help impact other people. And that voice that had been in the back of my head was almost screaming at me now, going, "What about you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I was, inside, I'm sitting here going, like if he's sharing his story, like I think of everything I've gone through, what a powerful story I could share. What if I could take all this crap that's happened and I could take it and it could help someone else? And it was in that moment that I went, you don't, I can love myself. I can love myself. I can love my story and I can love my depression because it's not going away. It's going to be here for the
Uh-huh.
rest of my life. It's that friend that you hate at times, but that you know is always gonna be part of your life. And I went, "This is this is always gonna be part of it. Let's take this and let's go out there and save someone's life." I had had a part where I felt a little bit of guilt not being able to reach out and help my ex-partner, because he had reached out 2 days before he took his life, and I was like, "No, I don't wanna have anything to do with you at this point." And
Mm-hmm.
so I'd carried a little bit of guilt and I had said, maybe we can take this and we can help save a life that you couldn't save. And so then I went on a mission of going, you know what? I'm choosing today to love me. I don't need anybody else's validation. I don't need anybody else's love. I'm enough. And the moment I decided I was enough, everything changed.
Yeah. I can see that finally realizing that you're worth loving, even if you're the only one that thinks so. You
Hmm.
know, it's just finally that affirmation that yeah, I'm here to stay now.
Hmm. And it's hard. I mean, we look at ourselves through eyes that no one else looks at us at.
Well, the
Like,
most rewarding things in life is not doesn't come easy. So
no, yeah,
everything is hard. It's worth going after to build your self esteem, your self confidence,
mhm.
everything else involved. And so yeah, it's not easy.
No, and it's
Anybody
the
says
hard.
if anybody thinks it's easy, they haven't been through what you've been through, or they haven't been through with somebody else. They haven't gone deep enough, fell far enough, landed hard enough to be able to say this was hard, but it was well worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, and it just was a simple shift in my mindset, shift in changing my perspective to, instead of looking at this as, because I mean, I couldn't go back and change anything. There was nothing
No.
I could do. I couldn't go back and change what my parents did. They did the best they could with what they had.
Hmm.
I look my grandparents, like my whole perspective changed, and that's been the work that I've done. You know, I I look back at my grandmother and I go, she did the best that she could with the tools that she had in her toolbox. Even my grandfather, um, I've gotten to the point where I bear no ill will towards anybody in that situation. I mean, I don't know what happened in his life that created the monster that he was, because I mean, it
Hmm.
came out afterwards that he had actually sexually abused and raped my own mother as well.
Oh
So
wow.
this was a pattern for him. So I harbored a lot of anger and resentment with my mother for years for allowing us to go live there when she knew what his pattern was.
Now I
But
would think that part of your healing over all this, I would think part of it, and you mentioned here a little bit, that you've had to learn to forgive your monsters in life, your evil. Again, some of it just because they didn't understand, didn't know, because they didn't have the proper tools, like you said, in their toolbox.
mhm.
But you've had to do a lot of forgiving.
And forgiving myself. That I
Ah,
was It was
there
probably
we
the
go. I've
hardest.
been waiting on that one. I've been
Yeah,
waiting
it
because
was.
I am huge that the Bible tells us, everybody tells us, we've got to forgive people who we perceive that have hurt us, harmed us, whatever. But
Mhm,
we have to forgive ourselves just as much, if not more, for the
mhm,
mistakes that we allow to happen or that we did.
mhm.
So, yeah, we've got to forgive ourselves just as much or even more than forgiving
Absolutely.
other people.
Yeah. And it's for me, it was harder to forgive myself than it was to
Hmm.
forgive other people. Like,
Because
I
again,
looked
you
at
don't
the
think you're worthy enough for this forgiveness to be able to move
exactly.
on in life.
Exactly. Like, I looked at the impact that my choices had on my children's lives. Um, you know, Both of my daughters suffer from mental illness. Um, and I remember sitting in a room with some social workers with my older daughter. And I remember sitting at this table saying, look, I did the best I could at the time with the tools I had. And I thought it was like another one of those light bulb moments where I went, there you go. Like, you did the best that you could, and you have to accept that and move on from it, because
And
beating
and
yourself up about every perceived wrong that you've committed, or every
mhm.
mistake that you've made, or every bad choice that you've ever made, because we make them. That's just life.
And
But
we're
it
going to continue making them as long
That's
as we
right. I
live
mean,
living.
I sit here and I'm always going to be an imperfect person. I'm never there's no such thing as, if we have this desire to be this perfect person living this perfect life, and it's a fallacy. It's not possible. So embracing and accepting the imperfection takes such a weight off of us, because we say, you know what? Okay, I didn't do that perfect, but I'm still doing the best that I can. And it's so huge, and it's so empowering. So,
Yes, and learn from it and move on. I'm not
absolutely.
saying it's irrelevant. I'm not saying it wasn't painful, but you can learn from it, forgive yourself, forgive others, move on, and don't repeat if you don't have to.
Absolutely.
So, and one time I
Absolutely.
got in a fight with this guy. I was like 12 years old, and it was our neighborhood Fonzie back in the day. He was 16, and we looked up to him. Him and I got in a fight. Here I am, 4 years younger. I mean, he's beating the crap out of me, and my dad is watching on the front porch. The guy lets me up, and I hit him in the jaw, and he gets me down, and started beating me again. My dad's sitting on the front porch. The guy lets me up. I hit him again. Then he gets me down, started beating me again. And he tells my dad, said, I'm not going to fight him, continue, but I'm not going to let him hit me. So finally let me up. I quit and everything. So he left. My dad says, "Well, I admire you, wanting to stand up and fight for yourself, but I'm going to let you know that no need in getting your butt kicked more than once if you don't have to." And same thing in life. Learn
Mhm.
from it. Do your best not to repeat. Not to say we won't repeat it,
Mhm.
because if we're repeating it, we hadn't learned the lesson exactly yet. And it may take us 2 or 3 times to get our butts kicked in life to be able to move forward.
Absolutely. And that's why you see the patterns that keep repeating in life, right? Like we keep asking ourselves, "Oh my gosh, why does this keep happening to me?" When we don't realize that it's because of the choices that we're making. It's like
Hmm.
until you decide, you shift that one little degree change and you go, "Okay, I'm not going to go this way. I'm going to go this way." Then things will change. But if you don't make a change, you're going to keep repeating these things over and over and over again.
And as we go, as you were mentioning about the tools in your toolbox, as we're going on, we build up a better toolbox to be able to help later on in life. And again, as I said earlier, one reason we're on this big ball of dirt is to help the next person. And so, like
Absolutely.
you said, for you going out, having your own women's retreat and everything to help them empower themselves, just think of what you've done to help
I
someone.
know.
So I'm so glad you were not successful in this suicide attempt. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect. I attempted suicide 3 times in 3 days. That's how bad I wanted out. And I
Mhm.
was found the last time not breathing. And they sent me to the hospital and put me in a hyperbaric chamber. And then I was in hospital for 7 weeks. And all that led into eventually with this podcast. So,
I mean, I know, amazing, right? Like it's when you realize that really there's a bigger plan out there for you, when you start really taking the eyes off of yourself. And I
mhm.
think that was huge for me because I realized that this man who had spoke, that who shared his story and saved my life, had he not decided to go out there and share his story, I wouldn't be here today.
Have you
And
had
I
someone come
remember
up to you, uh, coming back to your story, thanking you to have you I've had one person one time that, and not to say that I've never heard anything else, but this is the one that sticks out in my head. Uh, I got my neck broke playing football and was
mm,
told I'd never walk again, not move from my neck down, stuff, put in a nursing home at the age of 19. But I got out and I'm speaking, and it's one place, one woman comes up to me, says, "I want to thank you. I don't know why I'm here. I wasn't planning on coming to this, but I knew y'all were having this event. So I came to it, and I'm glad I did hear your message is going to help me." Well, I got an
mm,
email the following week from the director that set up everything. This woman was given like 6 months to live, and the message I gave about living your best life, she was going to use it for her last 6 months. And wow, so I mean, to hear someone else come out like that. So I'm just wondering, have you got validation from others? I'm sure you have, but I mean,
yeah.
this one just sticks out, compared to others.
I actually, after that workshop, I approached the lady who had organized that workshop and I said to her, it's like, I would really like to come speak at your workshop next year. And she's like, okay, right. Like we'll talk. I'll do an
Yeah,
interview. And she actually brought me in at once she heard my story. She was like, yeah, you need to tell this. And I remember ending my talk that at that event and saying that all I wanted was if I could save one person's life, every experience that I had had, a decade of sexual abuse, over a decade of domestic abuse, 40 years of mental illness, if I could save one life, it's all been worth it. And I finished my talk and I was getting ready to leave the room. And I had a lady walk up to me and say, "You know how you wanted to save a life today? I just want you to know you did." And she turned and walked away. And I got goosebumps right now. I get
yeah,
goosebumps every time I hear that story. And the MC at the event, actually, I've been working with him, coaching over the last 3, 4 months. And he said, what you don't know is that actually 3 people messaged the organizer of that event and said that they had been contemplating ending their life. And that after they heard you spoke, they felt a renewed purpose to be here.
yes.
And I was like, it's all, but had it only been one person, had no one approached me, I still would, be doing it and feeling it because I know how many years I sat back and listened to other people's stories, just taking it all in. but slowly letting the impact creep in, and yeah,
Well,
it's
just keep remembering we don't have to have that validation, even though it's nice, because
mhm,
that way we know we are helping. But there's going to
mhm,
be times, like you said, three people that you didn't know they contacted your event planner, and they
mhm,
come back later to tell you. But if those three wouldn't have contacted them, you did help and affect their life,
mhm,
and you may not have known about it. So I'm saying,
mhm,
so keep up the good work. Again,
mhm,
as much as, and I love the validation just so I know that what I'm doing is right.
mhm,
But I got to keep reminding myself I don't have to know it though, and that
mhm.
we just trust that it's helping people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, I may not impact a person today sharing my story, but you know what? Tomorrow I could go out and share my story and impact 5 lives, right? Keep
Charlene,
it,
a
keep doing
hundred
it.
years from now, they're saying this stuff on the internet's there forever. So, 100 years
Exactly.
from now, someone is going to find this thing, whatever it's called, in 100 years, and they're going to listen to your story, and you're going to help someone else in 100 years from now. So,
Amen.
don't be surprised if it's 101 or 99 years, but
Yeah.
somewhere again it's supposed to be on there forever now. Somebody's going to happen to come run through it, and you're going to transform their life and just be blessed as well in 100 years. So,
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, it's all about ripples. That's kind of my theme is like, we throw a pebble in the pond. We never know how far ripples are going to go, but they ripple out there and we don't
oh, you
necessarily.
made me think, and I can't think of her name. I had her on my show, and that's her theme is the ripple
Mhm.
in the pond, and
Yeah.
she'll so you can order a stone or whatnot. It's made out of some type of metal, and
Mm,
it has a word of encouragement on that one stone that represents your ripple to share people, whether it's
mm.
encouragement, faith, love. I forgot the it's 5 words. And yeah, I mean, you buy it and she sends it to you, and you don't know what you got until you open it up. But yeah, her theme is the
Yeah.
ripple in the pond. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right.
Awesome.
Charlie, man, you've been amazing. This is awesome. I'm sorry you went through everything, but I'm glad you found yourself and found your purpose and helping others. Again, we're talking with Charlene Madden, wellness coach and empowerment women empowerment workshop organizer coordinator. So y'all need to hit up Charlene to come to your event. So, Charlene, go ahead and tell us your website, social medias, and whatnot, so people can find you.
You can find me on Facebook at Charlene Madden Speaker, Instagram Charlene Ann Madden. My event, I can see it kind of there in the background. It's called Ignite Your Life, so you can find and follow the event. Last year we were virtual, so depending on where the world is at this year coming up, who knows? It could be virtual. So I've had people from all over the world coming in and taking part in the workshop. So you can check it out at Ignite Your Life. So
Good deal. And I'll put those information down in the show notes for others to find you later on as well. Charlene, thank you for being here. This has been awesome and a blessing for me. Again, I figure if no one else gets anything, I'm getting everything. So
excellent.
hopefully, somewhere along the line, someone else is collecting this information as well. So,
Well, and
hey,
thank you. I want to thank you for having this platform. And
well, and again, over my issues, I figured I saw a psychologist for a year, like you said you did. You saw one, and one of his things was I needed to write a book. I needed to get stuff out. I need to get into speaking. Toastmasters, the National Speakers Association says I need to get a platform. I need to get out there, share a message to help other people. And this has led from speaking, book, going to events, YouTubing, now podcasting. And
mhm.
so we're building as we go along. And this is part of my way of giving back to people is allowing them to have this platform to get out there so they can help other people. So it's my
Well,
way of giving back
thank
as
you for
well.
creating the ripples you're creating.
All right. Well, thank you. Now, Charlene, we know that there's people out there struggling today. And if you can leave them with a powerful message to help them get through today, that's going to be a blessing.
If I had to say anything, I would just say love yourself. That made the hugest impact on my life knowing that, you know what? You are worth it. You do deserve to be here. You do have value and you can create impact. Your story, just like my story, could impact someone else's life. So don't give up. If you're sitting in the dark, reach out. There's so many places, so many um, places online, phone calls you can make. I think 211. And if you feel alone, message me. I will sit. I say to everybody, I will come and sit in the dark with you as long as you need me to. And when you are ready, I will pick you up and help you step into the light. So don't ever feel alone. You're not alone.
Amen, sister. Appreciate the good, powerful word. And yes, you're not alone. People got there. Again, there's plenty of stuff on this internet that you can find help. Just do the Google search, find a phone number, lie to the people you're on the phone if you don't want to give your real name. Tell them your name is James Purdue. Tell them your name is Charlene. They don't care.
Mhm.
They just want to help you. And so go from there. All right, be sure to share this out to someone you know that could use some hope, some inspiration, motivation, help them get through struggling. And be sure you do yourself a favor and a blessing. Help someone else. Bless them with what you have and everything. Everybody else do something today, tomorrow, something next week that's going to help you persevere past your paralysis.